I will stand up. I'm very fortunate in having Rabbi Brisky as a dear friend, and he's always overly generous with his introduction of me. And I'm very, very glad to be here with you this evening. One of the wonderful gifts that the Laibl Rebbe gave me was to put me on the road. And every night when I find myself with such a wonderful group of people, I know that tonight you will be my teachers and you'll share with me. And I'll learn from your individual wisdoms, and I'll try to reciprocate in a modest manner. But in order for that to happen, I'm going to ask you to speak throughout. Raise your hands, comment, correct me when I get it wrong, and that way we'll have a nice Socratic dialogue rather than a monologue, because I have heard myself before. The topic, the theme, meditation. But I want to begin in this particular manner. 3 seconds after a person dies, bis 120, we should all live to 120, but 3 seconds after a person dies, they can no longer hear and they can no longer see. Even though there has not been any decomposition of the body in those 3 seconds. The body is fully intact. Why can't they hear and why can't they see? So you'll answer me and say, because the person is dead. But that answers nothing. That's just a word. What does it mean, dead? If the body is intact, we have to conclude that something has gone missing. If you have a bed lamp and you have an outlet in the wall and you have a cord connecting the outlet to the lamp and you switch the lamp on, there's light. When you turn the switch off, there's no light. Although the bed lamp is there, the outlet is there, and the cord is there. That's the analogy. When we die, the light goes out because energy stops flowing through us, from which we can conclude that we are a binary system, a duality, namely, made up of 2 features: a body, a physiological piece of machinery, and an energy flow. When that energy flow flows through the physiology of the ear, the human experience of that is called hearing. When that same energy flow flows through the physiology of the eye, our subjective experience of that is called seeing. When it flows through the brain, our experience of that is called mind, seichel. In other words, we need both features to operate. When we're dead, the energy doesn't flow any longer substantially. Later on I'll indicate there is still some residue. And therefore, we have to try to make sure that both features of our consciousness, the body and the neshama, which is the word we attribute to the energy, are operating in synergy in an optimal manner. That's why, for example, it's an absolute mitzvah to practice health and wellness. Not just a good thing, not just a healthy thing, it's a mitzvah. What's the word mitzvah? From the Aramaic root tzavta, which means connection. We make the connection, we turn on the switch, we make the connection between ourselves and something much bigger and much larger. And therefore, it behooves us to practice good nutrition, not to be too sedentary, and to ensure that we're agile, not just in limbs, but in mind and emotions as well. Is it possible to practice that agility, that exercise with mind and emotions, as opposed to the body, which we understand full well? To do that, we perhaps need to define our terms. What is emotion and what is mind as a distinction from each other? Could someone in the room please share with me what is emotion? The average age in the room is 25. You've had 25 years of life's experience. Surely you can answer very quickly what is emotion. Yes. Feeling. But feeling is a synonym. It tells me nothing. What is feeling?
Emotion. An automatic experience in response to an event.
An automatic experience in response to an event, like a car crash, which is also the same definition. Okay, we have to go a bit further. No? What's emotion? Yes, have a stab at it.
Energy and information.
Energy
And information.
and information. But would I not have interposed the word mind in association with information? You see, I'm cheating. I'm asking you for definition, which means I'm asking you for words. Words are the natural expressor of mind. Words are not the natural expression of emotions, except indirectly. Therefore, when I asked you to define emotion, I asked you for the wrong tools. Behavior would have been a much better tool. But what is emotion? So we're going to define it more pragmatically. If mind is the way that the neshama flows through the complexity of the brain, then emotion is the experience of that neshama flowing through the heart. And these two pathways of mind and emotion are quite separate, even though in Western psychology and in many fields of thought, they seem to be blurred. The lines are blurred. In our Hassidic teachings, they're very, very carefully separated. These are the two most prominent ways that the neshama reaches out to touch the world. We call that curiosity. Curiosity is a description of our inner self reaching beyond the body and touching the world through our senses. All these basic features of who we are very well defined in our traditional writings. But the question I pose for you tonight is, can we train propriety in the flow of mind and emotions? Can we get it right? There are some people who cop out and give an easy answer. All emotions are right. No, they're not. Just like not all thoughts that lead to actions that create hurt and pain are not all right. There is a right and there is a wrong. There is a good and there is a bad. There is a value system. So what is the manner in which we can project ourselves appropriately, which is another way of saying of how does the mind meet the emotions. So let me ask you another question. What comes first, mind or emotions?
Mind.
So we've got 50-50 division in the room. Boy, after 25 years, we're still not sure, huh? Well, half of you are right. The answer is mind. And I'll tell you why. How can you have a feeling or an emotion in any direction without there first being an interpretation that led that feeling? How can you feel happy or sad unless there's an interpretation of a situation that causes the feelings to be happy or sad? The mind always comes first, but for most of us, the amount of mind space that we provide is so small that it doesn't even register. So we say, oh, that person is acting fully emotionally, as if there's no mind. And it's true, there's very little mind. Therefore, to be masterful, to develop a compass bearing for the emotions, which is true north, we need more mind input. The Alter Rebbe coins the phrase in Sefer Tanya, the book of Tanya, which is the magnum opus of Hassidic teachings, Moach shalit al halev. The mind determines the outcomes of the emotions. Several hundred years later, West has caught up to Judaism. They now have the term emotional intelligence, which is exactly what we're talking about. Therefore, what's the answer? How can we create propriety in emotions? By interpreting correctly or well. So an example which I posed to you last time I was here, I gave you the example of how do you respond when people yell and scream at you? Well, not you, because you're a very select audience, but out there in the world, when people are yelled at and screamed at, they become a monkey. They copy the other person. Ah, that's my cue line. You're yelling and screaming, I'll have to yell and scream. After all, hasn't society told me I have to stand up for myself, I have to demonstrate that I'm to be reckoned with, etc., etc. But of course, that way madness lies, as Shakespeare would say. What is that expression of emotion? Anger. Let's say that's a rhetorical question. It's an expression of egocentrism. You're all about yourself. When we're angry, we're trying to affect the other or the environment in such a way that they will conform to my wishes. I wish to subdue you. I want to cower you into submission, because if you do what I want you to do, I will feel better. It's nothing about you, it's all about me. So emotions can dominate. Why can they dominate? Because we are the product of inner conflict. What's that inner conflict? We have two tendencies, two sources of spiritual energy. One which we call the nefesh bahamis, which literally translates as animalistic soul. And then we have nefesh elokis, which is literally translated as godly soul. Now that's simplistic. What do they mean? Animals are wonderful creations. However, they have limitations as far as human beings are concerned. They don't have mission statements. They don't have values clarification programs. They don't have a sense of consciousness of present, past and future to have aspirations. That's very human, not animalistic. But animals are very good in one feature, survival instinct. We also have that animalistic feature of survival instinct. Food, clothing, shelter, as Maslow postulated. The problem is, food, clothing and shelter for the lower order self, for the ego self, is never sufficient. How much food? How much clothing? How much shelter? Food? Well, I'm not going to eat unless it's haute cuisine. Clothing? It's got to be designer label. Shelter? I have to have a chandelier in every room, including the toilet. In other words, the Nefesh Bahamis wants more and more and more. It's immature. It's like a child. It's needy. Comes along the other side of self, the Nefesh Elokis, and informs the Nefesh Bahamis, you're doing a good job, but too good. Stop there and transform. Let me lead you. Like the Nefesh Bahamis is a wonderful wild stallion, full of strength and beauty. However, untamed, it's going to destroy, it's going to damage. However, if it's tamed by the Nefesh Elokis, it can then enter into the service of a good direction. Those two opposing forces within us are constantly there. The way we think is their product. The way we speak is their product. The way we behave is their product. What is Jewish self-mastery? To be able to allow those three facilities of thought, speech and behavior to always be dominated by the Nefesh Elokis, our higher self, our altruistic self, our other-centered self. And now we're going to introduce the word meditation, because it might be a tool, a useful tool to effect that self-mastery. So I've just provided you with a bit of background notes, because meditation is just a word. If you consult Professor Google as to what meditation is, you'll find hundreds of different definitions, many mutually exclusive, many competitive, and many saying to you, forget everyone else, mine is the right way. Before the 60s, meditation meant deep thought. It was just an English word that meant deep thinking. Came along some very enterprising Hindu gurus from the East to the West and introduced formats of what they called meditation. And it caught on for various reasons, good reasons. However, today, a lot of meditation is the legacy of the East. Now, that's okay, except that it may be hurtful for a Jewish soul. Why? Because many of the Hindu meditations have elements of what we call avodah zarah, idol worship. And idol worship affects the Jewish soul. How it affects, the technology of it affecting, I won't go into now. But I will tell you that there are 71 different soul systems in existence, in creation. 71, of which Jewish is but one. And each one has its specific function and role in creation. It's like the symphony orchestra. You have so many different instruments and groups of instruments, and each one playing a variation on the theme. But coming all together, it produces the most wonderful sound. only if they're true to their own notes. Likewise here. Each of the 71 has to be true to its notes. So if we Jewish people are not true to our notes, then the result is no longer beautiful music in the world. What are our notes? That's what the manual of the Torah instructs us. How to play our music correctly, spiritually. Therefore, when we behave in any way, or speak in any way, or think in any way, there are right ways that conform to our soul type and wrong ways. And therefore with meditation also, if there are elements of meditation which are foreign to our manual, then it affects our spiritual system. So for example, in those earlier days, one of the very popular schools of meditation was TM, right? Transcendental meditation. But what they didn't tell you is that each one of the supposed sounds or names that they give you are really names of Hindu deities. I challenged some of the speakers and some of the practitioners, and some were honest enough to tell me, yes, that's true, so why don't they come clean? And some of them would answer, we don't want to frighten people away, especially Jewish people. When I met with the Dalai Lama many years ago, I didn't go to see him. He actually asked to see me, not because I'm any special, but he was visiting Australia, and I was teaching at Melbourne University a comparative course in Buddhism and Judaism. And in that course, which was a large class, there were 3 Buddhist monks that kept coming to my sessions. And so when the Dalai Lama came, they must have informed him that there's this strange rabbi teaching this comparative analysis. So it obviously piqued his interest, because I received a call saying, would I have time to meet with him? So I had a whole discussion with my colleague, should I not, etc. But the decision was to go there. And he was interested to ask 2 questions. He wanted to know what was the secret of Jewish longevity. How have we survived 3,500 years, of which 2,000 years in exile? Because he said his people had now gone into exile. He wanted to learn from us. The other thing he was very interested in was the Jewish family unit, how it kept so cohesive over all of history, although unfortunately today there is much disintegration. So that was just a segue. But the point being, there are many pathways, many legitimate pathways, but it behooves us to live and practice ours. So is there Jewish meditation? So, meditation, as I said again, is just the word. What's the common denominator behind all meditations? Focusing. What you focus on, why you focus, how you focus, depends on the values and the spiritual teachings of that pathway from which that meditative focusing arises from. There's nothing magic about meditation. In fact, you don't have to meditate at all. It can be useful in a number of significant ways, and I'm going to share some of those ways with you, but it's not something that you have to do. And the second, and perhaps the more important teaching is, meditation is not an end in its own right. Meditation is a tool to be used for a higher goal. Like speaking is a tool for a higher goal, thinking and everything else. So focusing and being able to focus in a very narrow angle has its virtues if they're used constructively. So once again, I'm wearing my bias on the sleeve. There's nothing magical about meditation. You don't have to meditate. And if you do, you have to have a good reason why you're using that technique. You had a question. Someone had a question.
Oh,
Yes.
that was
Way back.
minutes ago.
You mean I've answered it in the meantime?
You talked at one point about anger arising out of the ego.
Yes.
And that struck me not as a Jewish notion, but as Christian duality. And as opposed to the idea that you could potentially be angry in a more conscious way for the right reason, the right person, the right time. And the right
Okay,
way.
very good. Anger's not Jewish or Christian, it's human. Number one,
Well,
we have a lot of facilities as human beings that express through many traditions. But I'm going to now contradict you even more boldly, and you may even become angry with me. Anger is forbidden to be expressed under any circumstances whatsoever, without exception, period, says the Jewish tradition. Now, that makes it really tough, because obviously some of you might question that and say, are there no redeeming virtues or circumstances where not only might it be valid, but it might prove to be highly useful? Well, in the 37 years that I've been teaching that subject, no one has taught me one yet. So if tonight you're going to share one and convince me, please do right now. I'm eager. 1, 2. I'll let the gentleman continue in case he gets up and leaves. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Not the expression of anger,
But,
the feeling, the initial impulse.
okay, I'll add to that, even that's not permitted in Judaism.
So if someone is abusing someone,
Yes.
it stirs up a feeling. It's not a menschy thing to do.
No, I agree.
You can immediately or quickly channel that feeling
Yes.
and handle it in a productive way. Nonetheless,
Yes.
there's something about the way I think HaKadosh Baruch Hu works,
Yes.
in that he gives us a feeling that something's not right.
Right.
It's in the fabric of God's
But
presence.
having a feeling something's not right need not be anger.
Well, it feels like a violation, let's say.
Okay, so let's go back to the word that you really used, abuse. When there's physical abuse, you're duty-bound to defend yourself. That's the only time when we need to use physical means by way of response. But with no anger. Why? Every soldier in David HaMelech's army, King David's army, was taught never to be angry in the heat of battle. Why? Anger confuses. It lessens your strategic thinking. It makes you worse as a defender. Every coach will coach his or her players and say, don't lose it on the field, because if you start playing the man rather than the ball, you'll lose. 2 of my sons served in the Israeli army. Both were officers. One was an officer in a commando unit known as Duvdovan, another one in tanks. They all trained their unit members never to get angry in the heat of battle. Anger has no mechanism of being successful. Strategy. To be strategic, you have to have a clear mind. You have to have an overabundance of mind and much less quotient of emotion, ironically. Okay? So if someone assaults you, you have to be clear of mind, agile of body, in order to be able to defend yourself. Now let's go to the second half, which was unsaid. What about emotional abuse? So when we use the term emotional abuse, it's borrowing the term abuse incorrectly. No one can emotionally abuse you successfully unless you choose to be a victim. Now, I know that sounds like a harsh statement, but it's very true. If your quotient of self-esteem and sense of self is healthy and good, then in the moment when the other one is seeking to abuse you, you have the capacity to flow empathy, and sympathy in return? What is it that is paining the other person to such an extent that they have to resort to this? I move from egotism of self-centeredness to the empathy of other-centeredness. Now, this isn't the subject, and I know it can open a whole Pandora's box, and we can have a whole lecture plus on that, and then some of you are going to walk out angry that I didn't treat meditation, okay? So I have to come back to the subject. But there was one more, yes.
I was wondering that sometimes we can feel the anger anyway, and the expression of it could, because we don't want to express it, especially not towards another human being.
Yes.
We can push it inside, let it build more pressure even, instead of finding a safe escape valve.
So what you're saying is, it's not something positive. I want to deal with it, so I might be able to repress it, and in that way avoid it becoming something which is outside of me. Not bad, but not ideal, because repressed anger causes you damage inside, and that's not useful either. The best approach is not to get angry in the first place.
But sometimes it happens. Like
No. Sometimes everything happens, but that's what self-control is, so that it doesn't happen.
What I'm saying is that it already happened. I'm feeling it.
Well,
My kid is feeling it.
don't. Come to Melbourne, spend a half a day in our institute, and I'll teach you how to catch it at an early stage so it doesn't even become conscious.
When can we go there?
Gentleman in the back.
Stand up so you can hear me easier.
Thank you.
If I heard you accurately, you said that nobody can abuse you unless you let them. Did I hear that?
Emotional abuse, yes.
All right. I take great issue with that
Sure.
because that's blaming the victim.
Yep.
Case in point, I have a cousin who's now a 74-year-old man.
Yes.
He had a father when he was growing up who had he was a violent temperamental man.
Yes.
And so when my cousin was a 6-year-old boy and his father was a 6-foot man, his father was very abusive with him.
Absolutely.
And how in the world can a 6-year-old boy not let a 6-foot man abuse him?
He can't. You're correct. He can't. I'm talking to an adult audience where we are older than 6 years old. Children and formative childhood effects on children, you're quite correct. They're much more helpless. They have not developed that self-esteem. They don't have that defensive mechanism, and it leaves psychological and emotional scars. I agree with you. I was speaking about adults.
I'm not going to make this an extended debate. This is my
But
last
you
one.
are. Go on.
I have a bit of a hearing impediment. So
That's good.
at any rate, a case of rape.
Yes?
There's a large man.
That's physical assault. That's physical assault.
And isn't that abuse?
No, I'm talking about emotional abuse.
I broke
And physical abuse, I said, you should use physical means of defending yourself. Okay?
And I broke my word. I said more than I wanted.
That's fine. So you can use meditation as a training tool to balance your mind and emotion so that, in fact, you do respond to the exigencies of everyday life appropriately. Whether the person is being nasty to you, or whether your child is being chutzpahdik to you, or whatever might be the circumstances. So what I'd like to do in the next few moments is to demonstrate some exercises that you can practice. But of course, doing them once here won't achieve the goal. Just like attending one music lesson to play the piano is not going to teach you to play the piano. We are an instrument, except that we're much more complex instruments than a piano. And therefore we need to be able to consider many more factors than simply the scales and the notes and the keyboard. And therefore, repetition of exercises is essential. In our Jewish spiritual tradition of Chabad, we have a classic form of meditation called hisbonenus. Modern Hebrew, hitbonenut. The word hitbonenut derives from the Hebrew word binah. Binah means understanding. But when we use the reflexive grammatical use of the word hitbonenut, it means to take understanding and allow it to flow through you in such a way that eventually it becomes you. What is 7 times 6?
42.
Why aren't you saying it, other people? Why only him? Or her? Some of you were trying to work it out. 7 5s are 35. 42, yeah. Those people who are trying to work it out don't know it. They know how to work it out, but they don't know it. The person who said it like that, unthinkingly, because it was already embedded as part of the person. So when we practice hisbonenus, we're taking a wisdom teaching, embedding it within us, so that our behavioral and verbal response during the day is governed and colored by that piece of wisdom. The use of meditation for a higher purpose. The methodology, Rabbi and I would, before our morning prayers, sit down and study a wisdom teaching of one of the masters, one of the Rebbes. 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever we could. Then we would take one small insight that we might have gained from that learning and spend time focusing on it. Focusing. And then allowing it to enter into our very conscious being in such a way that it becomes us. And then the davening, the prayer service, is the reinforcement of that process. And then when we go out into the world, it expresses. That's one format. Another more contemporary format, which you'll be familiar with, is the use of various modalities like visualization or scanning or otherwise, breathing, in order to break the cycle of stress. Stress today is a major problem, and stress hurts the body. It enters down to the cellular level of the body. You need to change your interpretation, your attitude to undo stress. Stress doesn't exist out there. Here's another controversial statement. There's nothing out there that stresses you. Stress is the way you read it, the way you interpret it. And therefore, if stress is of your own making, it's also possible to unmake it. That's in contemporary language called cognitive restructuring. Put it simply, you change your mind. You change your interpretation. They're yelling and screaming at me. That means they're in pain, because people don't yell and scream unless there's some level of pain. What can I do to assist them? That reinterpretation not only undoes the stress, but ensures that the stress doesn't arise in the first instance. And that you can do with everything. Some of you will say, but, that's nice to say, but, it's totally unrealistic. Why? It's unrealistic because you make it unrealistic. Because you don't draw up the willpower to practice the mastery, to create change. We're spiritually lazy. And that's the answer. Or, if I could be kinder, because we don't believe that it's possible. And that's very important, the belief. somewhere back in the early 50s, at Oxford University, a runner ran the mile under 4 minutes. His name was Roger Bannister. It was said for decades and decades that it's impossible to run a mile under 4 minutes. Physically impossible. Roger Bannister did it, and soon after, in the same year, as a consequence, John Landy did, Herb Elliott did, and others did. Today it's routine. Because we didn't believe it's possible, we couldn't. But when we believed it's possible, because it was demonstrated, we could. So when I say to you, we can, I want you to believe me. You can. So you can use meditative techniques to break cumulative stress. Because the problem of stress is when it keeps adding and adding and adding. So if you can create the empty space so that stress has to begin again, the damage to the body is much less. So we practice such meditative techniques also, which simply means to focus on something to break the cycle. And if we do it often enough, it changes the patterns of the brain. Negative thinking, for example. What's negative thinking? Because there is a pathway that's set down by the neurotransmitters that flow from one nerve end fiber to another nerve end fiber, and when they flow that particular pattern, as we can see on screen, that represents a negative thought. So what do? You change it. How do you change it? Well, when a river flows very, very strongly, it cuts a deeper groove. And the more that it flows strongly, the more the groove is deeper, and therefore more likely that the pathway of that river will be exactly the same. When you think something negative over and over again, each time it gets more and more. Similarly, when you vent anger over and over again, it doesn't get rid of anything, it simply makes you more likely to be angry. So what do we have to do? We have to start to lay down a new track by practicing a positive thought as soon as a negative thought arises. And Hashem created us in such a way that we can't think of two thoughts at the same time. Have you noticed? We can oscillate quickly between thoughts, but not think of two thoughts at the same instant. And therefore, if you keep substituting positive for negative and never allow the negative to get a look in, the new pathway in the brain becomes fixed and the old one disappears in time. I said that quickly though. Again, meditative practice to switch positive in the place of negative. So when people wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, consistently, worried, upset, anxious, and they come to me and say, what should I do? I tell them, I want you to think of 3 occasions when you were supremely happy at any stage of your life. And then I take them through a meditative exercise to explore those particular instances in full-blown technicolor. They have to recall every aspect of color, their senses, who was there, the weather, how do they feel, until they're really reliving that instant. And then I tell them they have to practice it 3 times a day for 30 seconds. Not long, 30 seconds for a week. And in so doing, they're able to switch slides. The negative slide gets put into the mind at 3 o'clock in the morning. They have to immediately pick a positive slide. They've got a choice of 3 because that's what they've been practicing. And they slip it in. It changes the whole milieu of the person. Meditative tools, focusing tools, in order to improve our lives. Okay, time to practice. Any outstanding questions before we go there? Yes.
Maybe you can answer it later, but when somebody wants to vent, how do you help them? Because I know one time I stopped that person from venting because I'm saying the more you think about it, the more it's going to take you there. And then she was upset with me. She said, I need you as a friend to hear me
Yes.
so that I can be free of this pain.
Yes.
So what is because at the same
Yes.
time, if I hear that pain, I feel it.
Yes, of course.
So
The question is, how can we prevent someone else venting? Well, you can't on the spot. But if at the appropriate time you sit them down and you explain what's going on dynamically, and they become more understanding, then you help them as time goes on to lessen and lessen the venting process until they don't. But it's like anything else. If you're a counselor, you're an advisor, because you're a friend, you sit them down and explain. No magic, just that's why you're a friend. Okay. I'm going to do 2 or 3 exercises with you. The first one is the use of breath. And many a spiritual pathway and meditative pathway and therapeutic pathway uses breath. But in the Jewish tradition, there's something very, very specific and real why we use it. The Hebrew word for breath, neshima. The Hebrew word for soul, neshama. Breath is the first level of conscious expression of the soul. And therefore, through a feedback process, if you change the way you breathe, you change the way that the soul flows through the body. But also, it's a focus, because we keep breathing in and out. In the deeper Jewish spiritual teachings, we learn that in and out of breath is part of a natural rhythm of creation, especially of the soul. One, the soul doesn't like to be entrapped in the body. It's too limited. It prefers the freedom that it enjoyed way upstairs. Therefore, it seeks to escape the body. However, some of you might recall that in the process when you were being brought back, that's called reincarnation, you were given some instructions, your personal mission, why in this incarnation you are living and what you have to achieve. You can't do that upstairs, you have to do it down here. So while you want to escape, at the same time you want to come back. The breath goes in and out, and everything breathes in and out, because everything has this tendency. There's night and there's day. The tide goes in, the tide goes out. The petal opens, the petal closes. That's all emanating from us in the form of breathing. Gently put your feet symmetrically on the ground, hands resting on your knees and thighs, back fairly straight. Head well balanced on your shoulders, and gently close your eyes. And just focus on the breath, the air entering and the air exiting. And if you can, breathe in and out through your nose, taking a slow, deep breath in and a slow, deep breath out. And become aware of the air entering being cool air and the air exiting from the nostrils being warm air. So as you breathe in, cool air enters. As you breathe out, warm air exits. And just focus on that temperature differential, breathing in and breathing out. Slow down your breathing and deepen it. Deeper breath in, deeper breath out. And with your next breaths, direct the breath down to your abdomen. And the way to achieve that is as you breathe in, expand your abdomen to collect the air down there, and then pull your tummy in to expel the air. So take a slow, deep breath in, expand your abdomen, collect the air there, then pull it in and force the air out. This is a little counterintuitive, so practice it for several breaths. Expanding your abdomen as you breathe in through your nose. And now let's lend some rhythm to the breathing. We'll breathe in for a count of 3, hold for a count of 3, and breathe out for a count of 4. So take a slow, deep breath in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4. Continue breathing through your nose, abdominally, rhythmically. A lot to remember, a lot to master. Smooth, graceful breathing. A perfect circle, no bumps. As you breathe in, the soul invigorates into your body to carry out its function. As you breathe out, the soul seeks to escape, to achieve its own comfort zone, as does the world. Breathe in and out. And just become aware in passing how relaxed you may have become in the short space of a few minutes, simply focusing on your breath. Focus again on breathing in through the nose, cooler air, and registering warmer air exiting from the nose. Begin moving your fingers and your toes here in this room. Move your fingers, move your toes. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes, coming all the way back here into the room. Now, doing this 2-3 times a day for 5 minutes is a wonderful way to clear the mind, to be able to break the cycle of stress. But if you have a repertoire of profound spiritual teachings, you enhance it in a much more memorable manner, then it has a meaning as well. The next exercise I'd like to share with you is to be able to recognize how chesed flows through you. Chesed literally means kindness. Love is its ultimate expression. But chesed is also the primary tool that Hashem used to embed in the universe. That's why everything in the universe is giving. Even the soil and the ground is giving. You take a seed and you put it into the soil, and the feminine side of the Godhead, the Shekhinah, manifests in the earth, and it causes the seed, which is a masculine quality, to be able to evolve. Chesed is implicit in everything, which is why we feel most happy and most fulfilled when we are giving and sharing of ourselves with a loved one. So let's make that really something that we touch, because the more that you can practice that, the more you're going to be a fulfilled individual. Once again, just take a position of symmetry, feet, hands, back, head, and gently close your eyes. And it's always useful to begin with a very short breathing exercise to disassociate from anything that you may have been involved in mentally or emotionally. So once again, focus on your breathing through your nose. In breath, cool air. Out breath, warm air. And focus again on that temperature difference as you breathe in and out. Become aware of a source of light in your head space, a glow. Picture it any way you choose. It's comfortable, it's pleasantly warm. Allow that glow to become a little stronger, so that the light begins to spread throughout your head and face, and you can feel its warmth and its brightness, comfortably, pleasantly. Allow that source of light to glow even more, so that the light begins to filter down your neck to your upper body, your upper torso, arms, hands, feeling the warmth and glow in the head, spreading, feeling very comfortable, pleasantly warm. As you become aware of its spread. And now intensify that light source even more so that it flows even stronger down your body, to your lower body, to your thighs, legs, feet, so that you can feel the warmth and the glow of that light source spread throughout your body. intensify that light source even more so. So now, not only does it fill your body, but it begins to penetrate out through your skin, creating an aura around you. You are in a cocoon of your own spiritual aura. The light source, your neshama, and the neshama's glow now all around you. Intensify it even more so that your glow spreads throughout this room, embracing everybody in your glow so that you touch them spiritually, allowing your chesed, your generous spirit, to touch them as well. Intensify the light source in your head even more so that that glow extends beyond this room into the world, allowing your personal neshama to play a significant role well outside the orbit of your body, affecting the world, affecting all people with your chesed, with your kind, generous spirit. And just be aware of your power to affect things at a distance. You extend infinitely. Focus and concentrate your goodness into the world. Focus again on your breath, gently breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Cool air entering, warm air exiting. Begin moving your fingers and your toes. Here in the room, move your fingers, move your toes, coming all the way back and gently opening your eyes. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, notes in a work called Likutei Diburim, in the opening chapter, on the opening page, as follows. You can project a thought to someone across the other side of the globe, and with your thought, affect them spiritually and materially with your thought. You don't end at the surface of your skin, and you affect people far beyond physicality. So just recognize that we are a swirling ball of energy that's able to change its shape and stretch and extend far beyond ourselves. And that the primary flow is that of chesed. Any thoughts? The worst is that it was pleasant. Some people ask me, why do I breathe in and out through the nose? Shouldn't you breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, vice versa? Well, there's no rules. Who says what? You know why I tell you to breathe in and out through the nose? Because then I tell you to register the temperature and you focus. Simple as that. It changes your focus. Yes?
Is it important to meditate at the same hour? Or
In the same?
the same time?
It's not necessary to meditate at all. There are other approaches to growing as a person. And is it important then to meditate at the same time? Well, I guess it's a matter of your personality. Some people like to lead a very orderly life, and they know that between 8 and 8:30 they meditate or what have you, and that's good. And other people are much more laissez-faire. Every single person has his or her own idiosyncratic soul with its own characteristics. Not only that, that soul was given each lifetime a different body and has to get to learn that body and to be kind and gentle with the body. And all this takes a lifetime to be able to get used to. So there's no rules. But if you're seeking to heal or seeking to grow, it makes a lot of sense to have a disciplined approach. And in that respect, doing it regularly, at least for a period of our life, does make a lot of sense. Yes?
How can someone train himself to focus and not having his thought going somewhere else and feel he has no control? The exercise that we just did,
Yes.
the first one is more focusing because it's physical.
Yes.
The second one, when you need to envision a line
Yes.
going down, I personally
Yes.
could not hold it the whole
No.
4 minutes.
No.
My thoughts, I was
Sure.
distracted with thinking. Maybe you can talk about
Why is it that when we first sit down to a piano, the fingers don't do what I want the fingers to do? I want the fingers to play Chopin just like Chopin intended it. My fingers don't. Why? Because I haven't yet made the connection between my mind and the fingers as an artist would, in order to allow them to have immediacy of response of my mind. So what do? I practice, practice, practice. No different in here. Mind wanders, all our minds wander. But if you learn with practice, more masterful discipline of the mind, it won't wander as much, and it'll go where you want it to go, in the same way as you make the fingers do what the fingers should be doing. It's no different. Anything else? Yes.
You spoke about anger and how it's never okay.
Never okay.
But in regards to righteous anger, which I think is what people were trying to...
Righteous indignation is the term they generally use.
Okay, is there any way, a good form of anger, that can be turned into something that's productive, or
No.
how do you interpret that?
No, the
Let go of that stress because you're watching the news and it probably was
Very good. You're right. The provocations are there. You know, in Hebrew, there are 5, 6, 7, 8 words that all get translated in English in the one word, anger. Those who are Hebrew speaking here will know there are words like ka'as, za'am, charon af, chamimut, rogez, and I'm sure you'd come up with others. How come they all get translated in the one word, anger? And the answer is the translations are wrong. There are many shades of feelings, but all too often in the Western world, unlike our Jewish spiritual disciplines, the understanding of what emotions are is incomplete. So there isn't the lexicon and the language to be able to define it as well. So if I were to give you a model from our Hassidic teachings in Kabbalah, I'll tell you there are 7 emotions: Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. Therefore, I already have a template of 7 emotions. But not just that. Each one of the emotions is made up of each other. So that's 7 squared. That's 49. I therefore have a chart of 49 shades of emotion to be able to understand my client, my friend, whatever might be the circumstances. So that's much more developed. So when we speak about shades of feelings, and you use the word righteous indignation is not anger. I don't know what righteous indignation is. It's like an old-fashioned term. And I'm sure no one here really knows it, although intuitively we have a sense of what it is. That somehow we're doing the right thing by entering into the fray and alleviating the plight of a potential victim. Sure, we have to have strong emotions. When we see an injustice, we need to enter into it. The reason why our eyes are seeing it, says the Baal Shem Tov, is because we were intended to do something about it. To do something about it means you have to have strong feelings. There's nothing wrong with strong feelings. You can be very passionate about things that are very, very important, just not anger. Why will I go to help somebody? I have very strong feelings of empathy, and I usually substitute myself in that circumstance. That's what human beings do, to feel it themselves, which causes me to go and help them. Nothing wrong with that. On the contrary.
I may make a suggestion. Let us know your next trip to the United States. We will full evening on anger.
Im Yirtzeh Hashem, I'll consult my wife to get permission. Or she'll be angry. No, she never. Yes.
One question is, I guess when you think of like Moshe killing the slave master, this is maybe an example.
Yeah,
He didn't act in anger, right? He basically paused, looked around,
Yeah, exactly.
made a decision, and
Here is this slave master attacking and whipping this particular Jewish person, and Moshe Rabbeinu decides to go in and help. In fact, he kills that person because that was the only way to stop him doing what he was doing. But he didn't do it out of anger. He did it very strategically. As you said very correctly, the text says he looked here and there, not to see if there were any witnesses. Look at Rashi there. Rashi explains, he looked here and there to see whether there was going to be a derivative of this particular human individual, a descendant who would be a good person, because in that case he would not have killed him. That was a lot of mind work there. Anyway.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm a medical doctor, so your psychologist is hoping to help me. So I have a patient with extreme anxiety, like health-related anxiety and summarization of a lot of her symptoms, but most of it revolves around fear of death. So what's your recommendation?
I'll close with advice for you.
Repeat the question.
Yes, the question is, the gentleman is a doctor and he's got patients who have anxiety, and in some instances fear of death is the cause of the anxiety. Do I have any advice? I'm going to give you 2 words, which are the answers. The 2 words are emunah and bitachon. Emunah means faith. Bitachon means trust. Except again, faith and trust are big words, and I don't know what they really mean. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave a very pragmatic understanding of these 2 terms. He explained it as follows. Emunah is the belief that everything that has ever happened to you in your life is for your current good. No matter what. Even if, God forbid, it was painful. Somehow or other, it was purposeful for your current good. Bitachon is the belief that the challenge that you face now will have a positive outcome. What's the difference between Emunah and Bitachon in this respect? Emunah deals from the past to the present. Whatever has happened to you in your life is for your current good. Past to present. Bitachon deals from the present to the future. The challenge you'll face now will have a positive outcome. Now, these are axiomatic propositions, meaning they're unprovable. I can't prove them to you, but guess what? You can't disprove them to me. So we're on equal ground. There's a 50-50 statistical probability that I'm right and you're wrong. So, why, therefore, not be a realist and know bad things happen and I should be scared of tomorrow, which is the 50th percentile of negative thinking? I'll tell you why. Because those people who practice negative thinking, which is often habitual, as a result, suffer anxiety. Because they want to predict the future, they can't predict the future, so they worry about the future. Economically, politically, geopolitically, for their children, for themselves, what if they die, etc., etc. Whereas, and also, by the way, you become pessimistic, and that breaks relationships. People don't like to be around negative people, pessimists. Whereas if you adopt the 50 percentile, that it may be correct to choose to be positively disposed, Emunah and Bitachon, number one, you'll be healthier. Because we know full well that stress and anxiety hurts you. The correlation of illness and negative-mindedness is clear. Furthermore, your relationships will prosper because people like to be around positive people. So I have given you two very positive reasons to think positively, arbitrarily, because that's what a belief is. But the results are beautiful. And by the way, everyone in this room is a believer. I know some of you will tell me, no, that's not true, but you are. And I can prove to you. How? How did you get here? By car? And yet you know the fatality statistics on the road. You know full well that there was a probability that, God forbid, you may not have made it here. Not only that, there are instances where cars actually break down in a dangerous way. But you, modern person, with perfect faith, entered into the car believing that you will get here. So don't tell me you're not a believer. You are. So I'm saying, if you want to believe in your car, believe that life can be good. Believe tomorrow can be good. And then there's one more aspect to that. One of the great books, Chavot HaLevavot, which was authored in the 1100s by Ibn Bakuda, notes that, and the Rebbe emphasizes this over and over again, it's not just a good thing to think well of the future, but your good thoughts produce the future. It's not just a nice thing. You actually actively involve yourself in creating the future. Okay, one last question. Lady in the back.
So that bitachon that you're expressing in that way is used in visualizations in the meditation?
Absolutely you can. I haven't used it tonight. I haven't used those exercises, but of course you can. I mean, how do we practice these things? We have to practice them by rehearsing them within ourselves. There's one point I didn't pick up, so I'll just say that before I say goodbye to you. Media. You and I are living at a point in history where our minds are being manipulated. Everyone in this room knows that the media is not a beneficent educational institution. The media is a commercially exploitative mechanism with one singular goal. What's that goal? Dollars and cents. And it knows its psychology very well. It knows that if it can frighten you and put you into fear, you'll be glued to the screen. And whether that be the common media or social media or whatever, you'll be addicted to it in a state of fear, which is great for them. And therefore, we have today to be much, much more aware of our inner strength, our inner stability, and to be able to view things much more critically and independently to maintain inner balance. Those are very important skills. I can't overestimate them to you. And yes, if you succumb, you will live a life of anxiousness and fear because you fear the tomorrow. But on a good note, the world has had so many possibilities of blowing itself up. And look at us. Here we are in the room because we always pull away from the edge. We have a wonderful assistant in that regard. God looks down on us and says, you know, these crazy people, I better come in and help them out a bit. And God does. And to each one of us individually. And I want to wish you many brachas, many, many blessings for your own independent and individual success. Because you all are special, you all are individual, and Hashem sent you down here, and therefore He's protecting you. Have a wonderful evening.